Oh, g'day champions. It's time for our monthly Q&A that I promised. I'm going to try and do one of these every month if I can, time permitting. So the deal is just leave your questions in the comments of this video, and in the next episode I'll do my best to cover every one of them. And it'll be an ongoing thing, hopefully. So share this around, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hopefully we can have a few laughs. And there may be some tears, no, just joking. So it's a beautiful day today, first day of summer, 1st of December. I'm going for a bit of a walk. We're gonna have some severe storms this afternoon apparently, which is nice. I love a good storm. It just gives you a sense of anticipation. There's an air of anticipation in the air. So being a Sunday, I try not to work. I try to make it my play with my hobbies day, which is doing videos and playing with my cameras. All right, I know I said I'd never take it out of the shop, but couldn't resist. We're using the A6700 brand spanker. We've got the 11mm f1.8 Sony lens on there. We've got a variable ND filter on the front so we can get the shutter speed and aperture we're after without blowing out the highlights. This is the little tripod that I use in the shop. I'm just going with the active steady shot, no gimbal today. We'll see how she goes. It ain't gonna be no Panasonic stabilization, but hopefully it'll be good enough. And we're running the Rode Wireless GO 2, and I'm just using the lapel mic today, not the headset. This is just a compact little rig, take anywhere. Let's see how she goes. So grab your favorite libation, be it a coffee, beer, tea, whiskey. Just pour it all in your mouth and swish it around, see what you get. And we'll run through these questions. What a place I live in, eh? Have a go at it. Lovely. Overexposed clouds. I don't know what I'm doing. Seems a shame to have the background blurry like that, doesn't it? I think it's time to shut down that aperture a bit. Ah, that's better. Look at that beautiful sky. Now you can't see my face. So hanging down at Dino's asks, did or do you play in any bands? What directed you into fixing amps, etc.? And do you have a favourite amp? So first question, you're getting a sneaky 3-in-1 there, champ. First question, do I play in any bands? Not currently, because I'm working about 15 hours a day trying to keep the lights on and service all your equipment. I used to play in a couple of cover bands, a few little original projects here and there, but nothing really ever came of it. At the end of the day, I'm more talented in repairing stuff than being creative. I come up with creative solutions to technical problems rather than I'm not the best at creating art. Do it for fun, but there's nothing really that I want to put out there in public just yet. So yeah, a little second question there. What directed me into fixing amps? Well, basically I was always interested in electronics. I've been over this in a few other videos, but always tinkered with stuff, built bits and pieces. I was more interested in robotics and automation actually to begin with, and that's what led me into the CNC machining background that I have in cabinet making and whatever. But essentially I purchased a fair few second-hand amplifiers, and eventually they crapped out for various reasons. I wanted to repair them, but I wanted to leave them until I'd done enough research to confidently know what I was doing when I went in there to repair it. So I did my research in my spare time, did a bit of groundwork, and then eventually I ended up restoring those amplifiers. I ended up selling them, but I didn't want to get into it until I knew what I was doing. So that drove me to find information and find books. I remember stumbling across my first copy of Art of Electronics in a Borders bookstore back when they existed out here. And just flicking through the book, it blew me away the amount of technical information in there. I bought it on the spot. And from there I just basically experimented with voicing, that kind of thing, and just the fundamentals of making an amplifier reliable. I found a lot of stuff on YouTube, you know, back in the early days. Back then it was sort of hard to tell what was legitimate information and what wasn't, so a couple of the channels that I used to follow them I no longer follow, because there's either misinformation or inaccurate information, and that's what also drove me to make my own channel. I wanted to do my best to present you the accurate information, not be lazy, do research before I go spouting my mouth off, although we all do that from time to time. And do I have a favourite amp? I'd say probably any of the 18-watt Marshalls, the 1978X or whatever it is. I always forget the numbers, but you know, the two EL84s, no negative feedback, cathode follower, and then boost in the front end of that with like a tube screamer or just a clean boost pedal to get more gain. That's sort of my basic setup. I do love a deluxe reverb, a big washy reverb sound, because I did grow up on like surf rock as well. So yeah, that's sort of my Fender cleans, the Marshall overdrive, but yeah, that's not exactly original. Pretty much everyone's after a Fender clean and a Marshall overdrive. Jonathan Doe, go through your beard care routine. It looks righteous. And a comment from Frankie Boy, that's Red Moses level. Well, I do pretty much nothing to my beard. I get it trimmed about once a month down at the barber. They sort of shape it for me. The tricky bit's get the mustache to go out sideways so it doesn't go into your mouth. That's really annoying. So you've got to get it to a certain length. Unfortunately, I went there last time and I told the bloke I want about a third taken off. I don't think his English was great because he took it to about a third of the length, which is not what I wanted. So I had to slowly grow it back, and it's in the process of that now. Sometimes to aid the mustache to go sideways instead of going in my mouth, I'll use a little bit of wax, but generally I don't do much at all. I get him to straighten it a bit so it's not crazy curly, and that's about it. Dr. Gear Australia, how you going, 6 champion? What's the worst non-local band you've ever seen live? And Pete Ross says, thank you for saying non-local. I guess a few people might be a bit nervous that I've mentioned their local band, but probably when I went to see Chili Peppers, it would have been no, it wasn't the Californication tour. I was still at school then. It was for schoolies at Queensland, so it would have been the By the Way tour. And Crazy Town, was it? That one-hit wonder band, Butterfly, blah blah blah, cringe as fuck lyrics. They sucked, and I think because they sampled early Chili Peppers song, the Chili's took them under their wing, but everyone was standing in the crowd looking at each other going, who are these wankers? And because I was at the front row, I had a half-full water bottle and I launched it and hit the singer in the head. So that made the gig bearable for me, and everyone was chanting, "We want Chili Willy." Well, the band was trying to play and the crowd ended up louder than the band, so what does that tell you? But the sound was terrible, the band is terrible, they're a one-hit wonder, they still suck. I think they'll always suck. So there you go. Pete Moore's got one I'm going to have to get my glasses out for. I don't wear glasses, I probably should. In modern valve tube amps, there's a lot of people questioning the need for the standby switch. With my H&K, that's using GMD40, that's Grandmeister Deluxe, I believe. I noticed that it can be a bit noisy if I switch off the standby switch within a minute or so of powering on, especially in our New Zealand winter. I'm not sure what winter would have to do with it. Otherwise, it's been stellar since I replaced the factory Chinese EL84s. Thoughts? So standby switches, I could probably do a whole video on them. Basically, it depends on the amplifier architecture. So if you've got an amplifier where the preamp nodes have filter caps that are lower in voltage rating than the unloaded B+, what happens when the valves are cold is that unloaded B+ will be around the 500 volt range. Say you've got 350 volt rated caps in the front end, they'll get overrated pretty quickly and possibly damage them, could go short circuit or cause leakage in the future. So in that instance, it's a good idea to use the standby switch. However, in some other amplifiers, like the Vox, some of the Vox AC30s, the Orange AD30 comes to mind, using a rectifier valve and with a big chunky reservoir cap in the first stage of the B+ filtering. When you use the standby switch, everything's up to temperature, you turn it on, that rectifier gets hit with basically a short circuit, which is what a discharge cap presents itself as when you first turn the amplifier on, and it smashes the rectifier with a big whack of inrush current, and the rectifier can only put up with that so many times until it gives up the ghost. So that can cause a short rectifier. So it depends on the architecture of the amplifier, the power supply, the component ratings. I'll do a video on it in the future. Keep an eye on the channel, and hopefully I'll get to it before the end of the year. Regarding using Kettner Grandmeister Deluxe 40, I'm not sure what kind of noise you're referring to when you use the standby switch. It shouldn't really make any noise. You might get a pop or a click or something as you turn it on or off, as the valves are still conducting and maybe one of the relays is letting go or something like that if you don't use the standby switch. It sounds like there may be an issue with your amp. It's probably not the end of the world if it's still functioning okay and not blowing any fuses, but maybe just comment below and tell me what kind of noise you're experiencing, and we might be able to go a bit further from there. Look at the AI responses. They're getting pretty scary actually on YouTube. I've included a couple in the screenshots here. The standby switch is pretty crucial on a tube amp, but that's just a matter of opinion, I guess. I love how non-committal AI can be because it doesn't know if it's right or wrong. I fucking hate AI. It's just a matter of letting the tubes warm up, but it's also a matter of protecting the filter caps. That's actually scarily accurate. However, I never say tubes, I say valves, because I'm an Australian, not a Seppo. Moving on, love the idea, looking forward to the video. Thank you, the Stevens Joshua. You got 2 names there, stop being greedy. You only need 1 name. Soapbox Earth, I think that's a different username. I recognise that profile image. Why does my armpit hair stop growing, but my wife needs to shave hers continually? Well, it's not that it stops growing, it's that it gets to a certain length and falls out and then regenerates itself. That's what I believe anyway. So if you shave it, you're constantly seeing the new growth come out. But if you let that grow, she'd be in the same boat as you, champion. You got 4 up. You got 4 thumbs up on that one. It goes to show the kind of audience I got. Guitar Slinger 2837. Would you buy a new Princeton reverb? And if not, what Princeton would you buy? Look, the Princeton reverb reissues are actually pretty good amps. The main issue with them being is the shitty capacitors they use. One of them, I think it's a 68 custom or something, is noisier than the others. I think that's the case with the Twin and the Deluxe reverb as well, but I'll go into that shortly at home. What I will do, champions, if there's something I need to research, I'll show you some screenshots. We'll just transfer to the home desk and I'll transport myself to my home office and we'll show you in greater detail. Bradford Lester says, I know you're a fan of metal films. Oh, like metal films? Like, I think he's talking about resistors, not Spinal Tap. What do you use for Fender preamp plate resistors? 0.5 watt or 1 watt 100K, and which brand? Generally, I'll use 1 watt if I'm using metal films. I tend to use metal films in metal amps because with the higher gain designs, they're lower noise, lower self noise. There's various different types of noise: thermal noise, Johnson noise. The one we're referring to is thermal noise, I think. I better look that up, hang on. But generally, in a low gain amp, I'll use a 0.5 watt carbon film. And then in situations where I want very low noise, like say a reverb mix resistor, anything high resistance, you want to go for the lowest noise possible. Using a 1 watt and a metal film, the higher power rating generates lower noise, and the metal films are pretty low noise as well. But in a low gain amp, it's not very critical. You can use pretty much anything, just make sure your power rating's right. I stay away from carbon comp for everything, partially for 2 reasons. Partially that even the brand new ones from CE Distribution are way out of tolerance, like often by 10-20%, usually on the low side, which is weird, but maybe they're compensating because the other thing that happens is over time carbon comps drift high. But even there, you're talking like $3 for a single resistor and they're not going to be available for long. So we're all going to have to make the move away from carbon comp for everything. And new old stock stuff, particularly like Allen Bradley, is just going through the roof price-wise because people are realising their new old stock is depleting and they can charge what they want for them because people buy them because vintage. Arrakis. Arrakis? That's a Dune reference, yeah? Good idea, not stupid. Well, thank you. Oh, look at AI, it's getting defensive. Oh, I think you just called me stupid. Settle down, AI. Cool your jets, son. Huff Puff Master. I love the names. Yo, Brad. Vintage Yamaha G5 practice amp gave a loud buzz and quickly went completely dead. No power or sound. Did the transformer die or what? And how would I diagnose it in that case? Thanks, love the channel. I'd take it to a tech. If you don't know how to look at that, it's probably not a great idea to go get your hands dirty without any idea where to start. There are troubleshooting links which I can put right here, right there, right now. Right there, right now. Which may help you out. But if you're not confident, look, you've got to get started somehow, but just be very careful, all right? So if it's given a buzz and stopped working, chances are you've blown a fuse, and that could be because you've got a shorted output device. If it goes buzzing, if it starts buzzing and keeps buzzing and doesn't blow a fuse, chances are you've got an open filter cap. Generally, the reason you get a buzz is because something's drawn over current and the filter caps can't filter out that ripple anymore with the massive current required. So then you get that buzz and that over current eventually blows the fuse. So it sounds to me like you got a shorted output device, whatever device that may be. I am Chris. I've got 2 70s Fenders with waxy boards and spaghetti wiring, Princeton and Vibro Lux reverbs. The local techs, even the good ones, don't think it's worth worrying about either, as long as the amp is operational and not overly noisy, i.e. not wanting to do a rebuild. I can't blame them. Does that typically translate to it's not worth your time and money for the marginal improvement, if any, of a more of a I'm very busy and don't want to be inside a single amp for a day or two? I'm curious why more guys don't strip and rebuild to make things bulletproof even when the customer is willing to pay. Look, that's a loaded question. I can see why a lot of guys don't want multiple day amps in the queue, because I'm doing that at the moment and that's kind of killing my workflow. By the same token, if there's something wrong with an amp, you've got to fix it or not take the job on at all. In the case of the waxy boards, look, you may be okay. Basically what happens is the wax melts and then dries again, basically, like congeals again, and it absorbs a bit of the atmosphere every time it does that. Now, if your amp hasn't had many power cycles compared to some of these other working amps, particularly the ones I've had on my channel, it may not be an issue. The way to find out is test the board for leakage. So anywhere where there's supposed to be 0 volts, any grid of a preamp valve, there should be 0 volts there. If you've got a couple of millivolts or in tens of millivolts or hundreds of millivolts, you've got a leakage problem. You'll also, if the problem's really bad, you'll also notice the pots start being scratchy on the EQ because there's DC where there's not supposed to be. So it's all about figuring out if there's an objective problem and then addressing it. The other thing you'll notice is you might have just weird sort of paper-terry distortion in the background, just strange undertones to your note, that kind of thing, and that's caused by the next stage being thrown off bias by the DC leakage. So look, like everything, if you feel like your tech's not telling you the full story, maybe look for another tech. If you want to reach out to me, I've got a database of techs worldwide that we can trust and that know their stuff, so flick me a message. Peter Moore, is that your second question? Cheeky bugger. I've currently got 2 guitar amp heads. What brand of power conditioning product would you recommend for Australia and New Zealand to use both in a studio environment but also when touring both countries? Maybe 2 different products. Look, Australia and New Zealand, we've literally got the same power standard. We've got the same plug. It's ANZ is the standard, so there shouldn't be any difference between the countries. If you're really worried about the wall voltage, one of the Furman power conditioners that actually changes the voltage automatically could suit you. They're very expensive and they're rack mount, kind of inconvenient. The other option is just with a Variac, set your amp up or get your tech to set your amp up for the highest possible voltage, which is usually around 245, 250. Set up your bias and everything at that level, and that way, in worst case scenario, your amplifier will be in a reasonably safe operating condition. Some amplifiers, like some of the Messer amps, are already way over voltage in both heater and plate voltage, so you may encounter some problems with that. I just want to say thanks. I recognise all these names. Thanks so much for hanging out on my channel and goofing around with me. I really appreciate it, and if you know anyone that's like-minded, of course, share it around with them. The more names, I try to remember everyone. I do remember most of you, and it's great to see you around. If there was 4 of you, 4 of you here, I'd still be making the same videos with the same amount of effort because it's my hobby. I love doing it. But yeah, I'd love to hit 10,000 subs before the end of the year, so if you can share it around. But just know, even if I had 20 viewers, I'd still be making the exact same content because I love it. And that's why you're here. You can tell I enjoy it. Look at our surroundings, champions. How could you not enjoy it? Anyway, back to the question. Lion Circle asks, is an oscilloscope necessary to repair tube amps? I have one, but find my multimeter more useful than the oscilloscope. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Well, you're not. You can get away with just a multimeter. It's good to have a visual representation of a waveform sometimes. It helps with things like diagnosing problems with tremolo circuits, signal tracing without going deaf. You can use you can make an audio probe, just use a guitar amp and just trace your signal throughout the amp, and then check those AC voltages with your multimeter as a reference to know what signal levels are where. Look, you can do it with a screwdriver and your friggin' tongue. There's ways to do it no matter what. Oscilloscope is not necessary. It's handy to have, and they just look pretty. Let's be honest. Everyone wants their workshop to look like a Doctor Who set, don't they? When you're dealing with things like digital circuitry, switching circuitry, they are very handy to have, and they do cut down the diagnosis time somewhat, but you can totally get along without one. Alders Rocks asks, I'm sitting on a rock, wonder if it's as old as you. Does Australia feel as far away as it actually is? No, well, I'm right inside it. I'm right up inside it, and it's quite moist, particularly today. Is there any extra room for new people? I've written back, there's always room for more, mate. We've got a huge country here, we've got lots of resources, it's a bloody beautiful place to be, free healthcare, we love it. We've got to keep fighting for it, as you guys know. This stuff doesn't come free. You've got to keep maintaining this kind of environment, and I love this country, I love this area. This is where I was born and raised. Such a beautiful place in the world. I love it dearly. I'm going to shed a tear. I told you there'd be tears. Ninja asks, what are your thoughts on the 68 custom twin reverb? I know there are issues with hum and have seen the fixes involved. Do you think that 2500 is a reasonable price for a new unit, considering even if you do buy something new from Fender, get a tech to go over it? I've seen all sorts of stuff like solder joints just not soldered, all sorts of stuff. Issues with hum, I don't know. The 68 customs I think have an issue with hiss more than anything else. Which is a grounding issue. They're grounding things in the wrong nodes and whatever, but we can go over that at the home office. Did you bail up the Interrail to Tenterfield Cobb & Co coach on June 16th, 1887? I may look old, but not that old. Serious question. To anyone that doesn't know, he's making a Bushranger reference because of my beard. Is that Ned Kelly? I don't know, I'll have to look it up. Serious question, I've got some old AWA new old stock tubes kicking around somewhere. If I remember correctly, the 12AU7 or 12AX7, are these useful for anything or anyone? Yes, they're extremely useful. They're incredibly good quality valves. And as Bar mentions underneath, you, mate, are about to be inundated. So yeah, people love new old stock everything, but in that case, they're actually very reliable valves, very well made. That's back when we actually used to make them. I don't know what happened to make us not make them, but because only the music industry and Russian fighter jets that are obsolete use valves these days, it's sort of a cottage industry now, so unfortunately we don't make valves here anymore, and as far as I know, no one in the States makes them. If they do, they must be a very small boutique one for the hi-fi market. Peter Ross, how you going, Pete? My amp head speaker output does 4, 8 and 16 ohm. My cab can do 4 and 16, 8 for stereo only. Which do you reckon is better to set out of 4 or 16, mate? You can set it either way. The transformer does the matching for you. There are arguments that with damping factor and whatever, I mean, the reflected impedance should be the same, but there are differences in, you know, how the coils work. That you can go right into the weeds, but the differences are so minuscule, really, it doesn't matter. Use either one. Thoughts on Laney amps, especially the 90s, 2000s, GH100L, VH100R and GH100S/TI. They are fantastic. They're, I think from memory, built pretty similar circuit to a JCM 800. They're like a poor man's JCM 800, 2203. Very well built. The valves are mounted off circuit board. The circuit boards are very high quality. The wiring's well thought out. They're beautiful things. I'll put up a screenshot or two if I can find one. Great amps, and you can get them for a steal because they don't have the Marshall tax on them. Califor, sorry, I got to zoom in here with my arms. As someone beginning to work on tubes after experience with low voltage and solid state stuff, are there any notable safety gotchas or weird edge cases to be aware of? Alternatively, to scare us neophytes straight, what's been your biggest safety scare or shock? Well, let's get into that momentarily, but look, the biggest thing with valves is the high voltages and the fact that not all amplifiers discharge the caps by themselves, or if they do, they may take a very long time to do it. So just checking with your meter, checking on the actual cap if you can, if you've got access to it, because when you got your standby switch turned off, some of those caps will be isolated from the circuit, may hold their charge, and you won't be able to measure it at the actual valve pin plate pin. So measuring the actual body of the capacitor, making sure that there's nothing between your multimeter and the cap itself to be 100% sure that those caps are discharged. If you do have an amplifier, one surefire way to discharge it is just turn the power on, turn the standby on, wait for it to warm up, play it loud, pull the plug out of the wall, don't turn anything off, turn the master all the way up, play it, keep playing it about a minute after the power, after the signal dies off. And that will drain the caps as best you can, but still always check them afterwards just to be sure. The one time you don't check is the one time you get fucked. So now, regarding the stupidest mistake I've ever made, I was working on a Nakamichi tape deck. Now, I never work on tape decks for various reasons, partially because you can't get parts anymore because they're mechanical proprietary parts. You can't just buy it off the shelf. They're actually made for that unit. and you can't get them anymore. Things like belts and stuff, sure, but the other thing is the budget's just not there. Usually you get one for 200 bucks, so who's going to put 500 bucks into one? But this particular one had two stakes that the mains came in on, the neutral and the active. Now, it had a broken belt, and I was trying to figure out which one. So I had my head down, and I'm looking at the tape mechanism, and I've got my head down lower, and I'm so goal-oriented on finding out this part that's not working or engaging properly that my friggin' temple hits the active and the neutral. I shocked myself with 240 volts AC straight to the temple. Yeah, I went home after that one. I was not in a mental state to do any more work after that because I had the shit so bad at myself for doing it. Insane. So yeah, don't do what Donnie Don't does, and I'm Donnie Don't. I'm Donnie Dickhead. Get the lead out. How you going, legend? Thanks for joining us all the time on the live streams and stuff. Why, when to use a diode in the B+ rail between the PI node and subsequent dropping resistor? Does the preamp really get so current starved under heavy load that this is needed in some amps? Is it a solution for a problem that doesn't really exist, etc.? I guess that would depend on the amp architecture and the values of the caps, that kind of thing, the dropper resistor value, whether it's a choke or not. Look, I think that would be more applicable to hi-fi amps. Let me do a little bit of research and get back to you on it. I believe I've seen it in the Merlin Blencow book. I seem to remember in the power supply book that he wrote, he did touch on that. You don't see it often though, so I'd imagine it's in places where you've got massive dynamic range, like listening to classical music through a valve hi-fi amp, that kind of thing. Ah, Mum's here. Hi, Mum. Hi, Brad, you are not a dumbass. You take after your mum. So does that mean if I took after Dad, I would be a dumbass? Question, if you sold air guitars in your shop, how much do they cost? I guess you could buy it with Monopoly money or something. I did find a $100 Monopoly note out in the car park the other day, so I'll put that aside. You can buy it with that. Would there be any benefits from using speak-on connections on the cabinet side of the head cabinet amp situation? If so, any easy way to swap mod the jack input on the cabinet to speak on? So first question, is getting a sneaky other question in there too. Absolutely. Primarily for bass amplifiers that are solid state. If you short out a solid state amplifier, the output devices turn to molten silicon before you can even fucking think about it. So if you've got signal going through your bass amp and someone trips over that cable, it pulls out, and if it's a metal barrel cable, you will short out the sleeve and the tip of that jack like no one's business. You'll take out the output stage of your amp. If you've got speak-on connectors, they're specifically designed to address that problem. So you plug it in, you turn it, you lock it, it clicks. If you try and pull it out, it won't. They are designed for high power amplifiers, PA amplifiers, that kind of thing, which are all solid state. In a valve amplifier, short circuits they can deal with, but open circuits, generally they will cause problems or have a flyback event and set fire to themselves. Look, the main reason we use phone connectors, they're not ideal for speakers, but they're adequate, and they're like a grandfather clause. You could upgrade to speak-on if you want. You can get jack plates. You might have to modify the cutout. There are ways to do it. Whether or not it's actually required, that's a case-by-case scenario. What makes a good cabinet? Any difference between cheap and expensive stuff? Look, I like 18mm birch ply for my cabinets. Timber stuff for the open back stuff, like the vintage fenders. Anything that's built reasonable quality, mortise and tenon or finger joint is okay by me. Stay away from your chipboards, stay away from your MDF. They just fall apart, turn to wheat bix. Jebbies, let's get on the move again, eh? Feel like I'm stagnating, standing in the one spot too long. I don't know how to pronounce your profile name, but that looks like a Robin Trower logo there. Love Robin Trower, bridge of size. What are your thoughts on the various methods of reducing volume without sacrificing tone? Look, a lot's made of this. It generally only matters if you're after output stage distortion. Look, guys spend their whole life on this. I just love a really nicely made master volume, you know? That's all you need. And a lot of people come to me saying my amp's too loud. I'm like, well, it's got a master, turn it down. I never quite get out of them exactly what they're trying to say. I assume that they want the sort of output stage breakup, but at a lower volume. But when I say that, sometimes I go, nah, I don't know. You got a master volume, use it. That's what it's there for. Oh, big question. Great idea, Brad. As per Lyle, I've been playing around with different bright cap values in the normal channel of a Vox AC30 72 model just for kicks. I thought I'd see what a much larger value did. It made a big volume boost, pushing the 12AX7 into breakup, and made a very nice fat sounding boost. So I put a 220 picofarad as a bright cap and a 0.022 microfarad on a foot switch, alternating with the 22 picofarad. How is the bigger cap doing this, and is it bad for the amp? Essentially, you're just creating a lower cutoff. It's like a filter, and you're taking that all the way down to almost DC. So you're just allowing more signal through. You may find that it might get a little bit muddy doing that. There may be a bit of blocking distortion, that kind of thing, which is why they kept the value small. But if it works for you, it works for you. You're not going to hurt anything. And if you like the sound of it, well, that's the mod for you. Jonathan Doe has misunderstood the comment, I think, the question. If it's tube rectified, there's a microfarad limit for the first capacitor before the rectifier. Even with silicon rectification, you can push it too far and end up heating the power transformer up. I can't remember the science behind it. He's talking about something different, but still valid. There is a quoted maximum capacitance for a capacitor input on a rectifier valve. If you go above that, you risk shorting the valve. That's what we touched on in the standby switch question. And also, you can't overdo it. It sounds like a free lunch. Just throw massive capacitance at a solid state power supply. You get what they call transformer heating. So basically, the massive current pulses create inefficiencies in the transformer, and you end up overheating it. So overloading the transformer with no real benefit. And he backs that up. I've had it happen when I thought it would be a good idea to upgrade the GFX Spider pedalboard power supply from 100 microfarad filtering up to 1,000. Transformer was really cooking until I dropped the filtering to more sane levels. And yeah, he's witnessed that firsthand that I'm talking about. So that's validating my claim. Michelle, I wonder what Michelle that could be. If you're in the circus, what act would you be? Well, the clown, clearly, but I don't know. I'd love to do trapeze. It seems like really cool. Plus, you get to hang out with really hot gymnast chicks. So probably a trapeze artist, I guess. I don't think I got the build for it, but yeah. We went to see a sort of adult circus show. It was a little bit burlesque recently in Penrith here. It was called Infamous. It was really good. What happened to the Tubemeister 36? Are they poorly made or just hard to access? Would you recommend those amps? Thanks. Look, they're pretty well built amps. They tried to jam a lot of shit into one amplifier, however, and as a result, you can have some reliability and service issues. I've got some videos on them. I didn't go into depth because there wasn't a lot of stuff wrong with the ones I've had. They tend to, or the cathode switching MOSFETs tend to go short circuit if you have a valve failure. But having said that, if you have a valve failure in pretty much any amp, there's going to be some collateral damage. They're just a real pain in the ass to take apart, particularly the Grandmeister, because there's so much stuff happening in it. Look, the Tubemeister 18 is probably the sweet spot because it's simple. You can get them cheap, and you can run them silently because it turns off the cathodes in the output valve. So look, they're not bad amps. Just be aware that they take a lot of time to disassemble, and you kind of can't work on them while they're together. So testing and analysis is difficult. You've got to sort of hit every target when you've got the thing apart, put it back together, and if it doesn't work again, you've got to take it all apart again and figure out what the hell's going wrong. You can't sort of test it in situ, which makes them very expensive and time consuming to work on. But they sound good, and you can get them pretty cheap. And if you are tech minded, they are a kind of amp that you could probably keep running reasonably cheaply, just time consuming, that's all. Catman doo-doo. If converting a combo from a 15-inch speaker to a 12-one, what would your preference be, to replace the whole baffle or just use a converter ring? Do you reckon it makes no bloody difference? I've asked what amp. It's a Fender Excelsior modified with tone pot and foot switchable trem. I've been running it as a head into a cab with my old 1995 greenback, and it sounds awesome. I want to combine the two as can't be asked lugging the extra cab around. Look, if you can make it fit, an adapter ring's okay. It's a pain in the ass to make unless you've got someone with a CNC. Making one with a jigsaw is a bit painful, but they do work. Just be aware that you'll be throwing the speaker back by whatever thickness of the adapter ring there. So if it is tight, you may be hitting the transformer. If If the baffle is easily removable, it's probably a good idea. If you've got access again to someone with a CNC, it's pretty easy to make a new baffle. And chances are you can upgrade the quality of the material. I think, not sure from memory if they're plywood or chipboard, but I'd be going with a, oh, spiderweb. I need a stick. I'd be going with at least like 9 to 12 mil birch ply for any baffle. Disability Exams asks, my Silverface Bandmaster Reverb has the optional Fender /JBL D120F speakers with the spring-loaded wire terminals. They don't feel very secure to me. What are your thoughts? And Pumpstein, I think that's another name. I recognise that profile picture. If a speaker wire gauge is significantly smaller than the speaker connector hole, you can strip another 1/4 inch off the wire, piss off fly. Bend the end of the wire back on itself, doubling the thickness and insert, or you could replace the speaker wire with thicker gauge wire, which many say adds a bit of support for lower frequencies. Not really, they just have support for higher current. So look, I've never had one of them fail. It feels a bit sketchy when I use them as well. I tend not to tin the wire in that case, because then you end up with a very small contact patch. I'd like the strands to sort of flatten out and give you a little bit more contact area on that very critical connection. I've had PA amplifiers, bass amplifiers, all sorts of high power, like 1000-watt cabs, using those connectors with no issues. So although they do feel a little flimsy, providing your spring's got enough tension, they tend to work in the long run without any issues, so I wouldn't stress about it too much. Flies! Right when you got both hands occupied. Piss off! Trying to keep moving. I think the flies are attracted to me. Wonder why that could be. I did have a shower this morning. I have an amp with a whopping 220 microfarad after a GZ34, then 470 ohm 5-watt resistor, then another 220. So reservoir cap is way too big, 60 microfarad max. What role does the second 220 microfarad play in that regard? Feels kind of funny to leave that in place, but the limit only refers to the reservoir. Plan to change both to 60 though. Is the 470R still okay? So the 470R is just acting like a poor man's choke. No biggie there. You often see like a 1K in that position. In some of the Marshall stuff, you see a 270. Not critical, it's just a screen node dropper, I guess you could call it. But that first reservoir cap is way too big. The second one is current limited by that resistor, so you can have a large cap there. Having said that, I think that's a bit of overkill. Goes back to our earlier question talking about the transformer heating in a solid state amp, but yeah, that's way too much for a valve rectifier, particularly the GZ34. Peter Moore, is that your second question, you cheeky bugger? Have you tried a solar guitar yet? That's Ola's. Ola. Hola. If not, why not? I have 5 and 1 more. And then Dustin Thiessen says, how about a solar powered laser beam guitar? Well, that sounds all right. I haven't had any solar guitars. I've heard mixed results. However, I think they're made in Indonesia. I've heard the biggest problem with them is, or was, QC. That is always a challenge when you're getting guitars built offshore, particularly with the multi-scale frets. Some of the ends were lifting because you've basically got no constant radius there to clamp the frets down with. You sort of need to make a different call for every fret to clamp it in and get the ends tight. But I've also heard that they've got on top of those problems and they were good with QC. I like Ola, I watch his channel, I think he's hilarious. He's got that childish humour that most of us still have at least a speck of. I don't know about the fart jokes though, they're a bit lame. But yeah, I just haven't seen one by chance yet. Doesn't mean I don't want to. Yeah, having 5's pretty out there. How many guitars have you got, Pete? I'm running out of battery. Have to go home and friggin' charge my camera. Oh well. Time for a scene change. Oh shit, old mate's in a spot of bother. Thought that was a fucking garden hose there for a minute. It's a snake. He's been run over. Poor bugger. Didn't see him there on the walk down. It's a shame. Yeah, that's what you get. Fucking around on the road. The road's so attractive to snakes because it's nice and warm. Right, champions, I'm back. I've regrouped. It's a bit quieter now, so the cicadas won't be punishing your tinnitus, should you have any. Battery died, went home, then I went for lunch with the missus and bought a spare battery in my travels. So that won't happen again. So where were we? Halfway through the questions. There's a few repeat questions happening. Oh, people asking multiple questions. So what I might do next time is I'll limit it to one question per person. Whatever your first question is the one that goes in the drawer. There's a few drops of rain. We've had a pretty epic storm roll through. Thank you, cockies. Cockatoo, or 3. Pete Moore, is that your third question there, buddy? I bought a new old stock 2017 Bugera T50 Infinitum. So that's a Bugera, I guess T50's a 50 watt head in Jan 2022. They couldn't find the foot switch, but threw in a Randall foot switch, which controls 2 channels and reverb on and off. The amp has been stellar. One thing though, if I switch channels using the switch on the head, no problems. Often though, using the foot switch to do the same thing, I get a massive pop sound. Why would using the foot switch do that, but unplugging the foot switch and using the switch on the head not do that? Cheers from New Zealand. I don't know, I'd have to have a look at the circuit. Chances are there may be some circuitry in there to offer like power to indicator lamps, LEDs, something like that in the pedal. And maybe that's not allowed for or done the same way in the new pedal. Could be a design issue, it is Bugera. But without looking at the circuit and of the stock foot switch, the new foot switch and the amp, I probably couldn't tell you. Definitely not off the top of my head. Don't know everything, champions. No fuck all to be precise, but I know how to use Google, which is more than a lot of people do. I've got a big one here, so I think I better sit down for this. I can't walk around, not trip over stuff and read a massive paragraph all at once. So we'll find a nice little spot, sit down and rancho relaxo it. I can hear a wonga pigeon. Hear that? I don't know, good place as any. Let's go right down there. I'll slip over and smash my camera. How's that? Oh, this is really steep. How's the stabilisation doing? Not fantastic. She ain't no penny boy, but it can focus, which is fun. Al, I guess your name is, asks, cool, I was gonna ring the store about this one. Free shot, cheers, not an amp however. I've got a Boss DR670 drum machine from the prehistoric days that turns on, makes noise, lets me scroll through menus, etc. However, it won't record anything, and when I run through the tests according to the service manual, it fails at a particular test, tells me to update the firmware via MIDI. I can't find the DR670 firmware on the Boss website, nor do I have a MIDI to computer type connection. I'm sort of at a loss of what to do. Everyone just goes ditch it. Would you or anyone you know might have a copy of the old firmware and or a way to install it via MIDI? I just want to record some beats the way I like and know. I'm a dinosaur. Someone's digging my bones. Thanks, Brad. And you make my Saturday mornings better. Well, that's when I have time to stream. I'm sorry I've been a bit slack with that recently. I've just been way too busy with work. So, Boss DR670. What is it? So a MIDI to USB interface can be had ridiculously cheaply, like for 10 bucks or thereabouts. So no real excuse there. However, the firmware is going to require some digging. It must be out there somewhere. You've got to get on the forums. You've got to do a bit of groundwork for the vintage. Well, vintage, it's still digital and got MIDI. But yeah, the vintage-ish stuff. You got to do some legwork, man. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I mean, we can ask around, see if anyone else that's watching has access to that kind of gear. But if not, you just got to do a lot of legwork, talk to some people in the know, send some emails, annoy some people, be very polite to them. Don't have an insistent tone or they won't answer you at all. Be very humble and they might help you out, but there's really not a lot I can do other than that. Failing that, there's probably other machines that will fit the bill as well. You know, it's not like drum machines have undergone like a complete one-way thing like an iPhone or whatever. There are many different varieties out there that you can use. These old vintage ones, styled ones that are being made today. You know, you've got people making analog sequences, all sorts of old school shit. So there's got to be something out there that will fit the bill that's a current model or just less old than that one. But yeah, I can't help you directly with those questions. Definitely not right now. But if anyone else can comment and maybe give him some direction, I'd appreciate it. RPM 4999, you touched on this a while ago, is using a step-down transformer on a USA amp in the UK likely to be problematic. You guys are running 50 Hertz mains over there from what I remember. So the issue can be, not always, but it can be, if the core size of the transformer is as small as it can be for 60 Hertz, if you run that on 50 Hertz, even if you give it the correct voltage, it will run very efficiently, possibly overheat or sag ridiculously in its voltages. Basically, the core saturates. It needs to be a certain size to hit that 50 Hertz frequency. First example comes to mind, the Soldano Atomic 16. The little transformer burns out because it can't handle 50 Hertz. If you've got a transformer like out of a Marshall 100 watt head from the 70s, that thing, you probably give it 40 Hertz and it'd still work. Those are overbuilt and they work on 50 or 60. On the top of the transformer, it usually has a little sticker, particularly on like Hammond transformers replacements, non-OEM stuff, and it'll say the rated frequency. On the back of the amplifier, if it's an international amplifier, it'll say the expected frequency, and if it's a reasonably modern one, they have to, I believe by law. The old ones, it was the Wild West. If they do say anything, it'll probably just say 50 Hertz because that's the country it was manufactured in. So it's hard to say definitely this will work, definitely this one will not, but if you're running the amplifier and you reach down and hold the transformer, and if you can't comfortably hold your hand on the transformer indefinitely, you've probably got a transformer that doesn't like 50 Hertz, in which case you'll have to upgrade the transformer. In that case, look at Hammond, Hayboa, Classic Tone is no more, but Mercury Magnetics if you've got specific types that the others don't make. There's other third parties, there's Edcore as well. There's a bunch of them still out there making replacement transformers that you should be able to fit in pretty much any popular amp. Steve Moore, I like this idea. Please keep up your recommended reading for those of us who want to learn more about getting into the weeds of amp troubleshooting. I will do that, I'll continue to do that, but however, to continue to do that beyond my book collection, I'll have to buy more books, won't I? So I might sort of pivot to maybe some online sources, like here's a great article. A lot of that's free too, so there's no excuse for not reading it. Stuff like the Valve Wizard's got some excerpts of his book, Merlin Blancow again. Art of Electronics has got a website with excerpts. Places like Rod Elliott's fantastic, magnificent page, ESP, Elliott Sound Products. Just free information as far as the eye can see. Insanely detailed, well thought out stuff, and he knows what he's talking about. Rob Robinette's site is another one. He's got fantastic stuff, particularly for the beginner, to show you the structure of how an amp works, the signal flow, what each part is called, what it does. So if you are having an issue with your amp and you go on one of the forums, you'll be able to actually explain to people, oh, the second stage grid stopper has this voltage on it, and everyone will go, yep, right, sweet, no worries. But he's also got a good troubleshooting article which goes into just guitar amps, but ESP Elliott's, Rod Elliott's Elliott Sound Products page, he has a troubleshooting article on there as well, which is more generic to suit all electronic devices with a focus on audio, but not necessarily guitar amps or valve amps. Good idea for a Q&A, and so he's going for a walk. Thanks, Johnny Moondog. Yeah, I think sometimes when I'm sitting there in front of a screen, you can't think of what to say, your thoughts get twisted up. When you're on a walk, things just seem a bit clearer, you know? Maybe it's just seeing how small we are in the world and insignificant. You just chill out a bit. You don't stress about the small stuff. There is music coming from down in that valley somewhere. There's nothing down there, it's just a river. Maybe there's some kids with a Bluetooth speaker or something. I don't know. RPM again. You ever miss your CNC days? What CAD CAM software did you use? I do miss it a bit, particularly when I need just a one-off thing that I would have been able to easily machine in about 5 minutes before. It was really fun designing stuff on a screen and bringing it into reality and watching it be installed in a shopping center or whatever, and watching everyone be amazed as they walk past it. It was really cool, and it was cool being part of a team as opposed to what I do now, working solo. Each has got their pros and cons, but I do miss it sometimes, and you feel like you've really got a lot of work done when you stand back and look at the thing that's been constructed or whatever, and no one thought you could do it, and it all worked, it all slotted together perfectly. It's a big level of satisfaction there, but you know, we do the same thing now, but with circuit boards and chassis. So look, as long as you get satisfaction out of your job, I think you will maybe not go insane as quickly as otherwise. You'll still go insane, but slower. So the CAD software I used was PythoCAD, pretty much exclusively. There were some other bits and pieces, add-ons and modules and stuff for it to do various things. And the CAM software was BSE Works and 3D Analyzer, which is an Australian company. So BSE Works is an Italian company. They're the manufacturer of the big CNCs. That was the what would you call it, post-processor, I guess, software, and just the direct machine control. You could program stuff directly on the machine, but it was very, very clunky. It was like the software was written in 1998, literally, and they never bothered upgrading it. So basically we just did all the CNC stuff in Analyzer, and if we had anything super fancy, you'd have to export individual DXF and manually, you know, insert the machine, the tooling data, I guess. So it was pretty clunky, but from what I gather, all the marketing guys for these CAD CAM software packages say, oh, this one's amazing, you know, you don't have to do this. You always have to fuck around. You always, and CNC operators, CAD CAM guys will be laughing along going, yep, nothing's automatic. The salesman's a mealy-mouthed motherfucker like they all are. And everything requires fiddling and fucking around and cutting a piece wrong, and yeah, refining your process over time, and bits and pieces that you shouldn't have to do. All CAD CAM software has those issues. To be honest, moving like into the PCB design stuff and KiCad, it's amazing how much further ahead KiCad is than a lot of the CAD CAM software. And some of it, like PythoCAD that I bought, that cost me like 20 grand, and I've still got a license for it. It paid itself off in like 5 jobs, but still, the fact that you're paying that much for the software and it's still so clunky was just really always insane to me. It really blew me away, but you sort of were up against the wall. You had to deal with the software. It's a bit like how you had to use Pro Tools for so long because all the studios used it, so you had to hand over your pound of flesh just to use the system that everyone else insists on. So being a freelancer, you can kind of do your own thing, which is another good aspect of it. Peter Moore again, is that like your 5th question now, buddy? I'll let you go this time because it's the first one we've done. As a fellow Aussie, albeit I live over in New Zealand, can you recommend best component supplies for use for us living in this part of the world? I remember 30 years ago I could drive to many places in Melbourne, burbs, to buy resistors, caps, etc. Also back then Dick Smith used to sell stuff like that too. Not these days. Can you list somewhere your preferred supplies for components, soldering preferred brands, solder and flux, yada yada yada, everything that an Aussie wanting to tinker or go full on into repairs would need in order to do that? Cheers, bro. So I don't order much at all from Australia because there's really not a lot here of any use. Pretty much everyone worldwide is going to DigiKey, Mouser, Element 14, RS Components. The stuff that I do sometimes find a quick, or a sort of a one-off part that no one else has is Tektronix. Sometimes they have some rare switches that no one else has. Wes components, I try to avoid them for components because their caps, the resistors and stuff are just unknown brands and not very high quality and not stored very well. Their leads are corroded, that kind of thing. Only really use Wes for components when I have to. Pretty low quality stuff, but very quick. Something just flew in my ear, but I tell you, I love Australia. But they do have some stuff again that no one else has. For valves, if you're not buying in bulk, just go with your Vatco in Australia. There's also Tube Audio in Melbourne, which I've had no issues with. They've been good to me. There are smaller ones that come and go, particularly with valves, because everyone wants to make their fortune selling new old stock and whatever. But often they don't stick around too long. They realise the realities of running a business and evaporate. So if we're talking amp specific stuff, particularly valve amps, we'll be talking CE distribution, Antique Amplifier Supply. I think they're the two in the same company. Mojo Tone, there's tons of them. I could probably do a video just on suppliers, but you're really getting into the weeds. You kind of have to do your own legwork there too, and that's what Google's for. Search for the component you need, find a part number if you can. Like all the belts and sockets that you need have a particular belt and part number. So Google by the part numbers instead of the part descriptions. You'll have less of a chance of getting ripped off because you'll see the actual primary suppliers that way. A lot of the time, someone will sell a belt and socket. They won't tell you the part number because they don't want you comparing, eggs to eggs somewhere else and realizing that their price isn't great. That happens a lot with proprietary parts too, like amp modules. They don't quote the actual manufacturer part number because then you can't go and find it directly from the manufacturer. So you've got to do your research in that respect. Procuring, sourcing, ordering parts is probably like 20–30% of my life, as well as maintaining stock levels, that kind of thing, and just assessing bits of gear, finding out what I've got to order, adding them to orders, just all the admin bullshit. It's very time consuming. I wouldn't miss like J-Car and Dick Smith too much because, rose-coloured glasses being what they are, they didn't have quality stuff. They had fuck all. They had 5 transistors. Don't get too nostalgic for that. I don't miss them that much. Plus they just bent you over on the pricing. It was like Radio Shack in the States. You get a box that's got 2 resistors, half-watt carbon films in there, and they charge you like $8 for it. Like that. Don't pine for those days, mate. They weren't good. Sound City EC. I have a twin reissue. I guess you mean twin reverb reissue Fender with 120 Hz hum. As far as I know, it can only come from the B+. Well, not really. Recapped and hum remains. If you take out V6, it lowers the hum, but remains. Check the grounds already. What we suggest I should check next. Thank you. So again, get onto Rob Robinette's troubleshooting guide. But without you quoting the ripple on each stage, we can't really go anywhere from there. So set your meter to AC, be very careful. If you don't know what you're doing, take it to a tech. You've already recapped it, so you've already rolled your sleeves up, I guess, but be very careful. Check the ripple, set your multimeter to AC and probe each of the positive side of all the filter caps. And you should have probably in the order of several volts, maybe 3 or 4 volts ripple on the first reservoir cap. And then I'd want to see about 100, maybe 200 millivolts of ripple on the screen node. So that's the one supplying the screen grids. And then decreasing amounts from about 20 down to probably less than say 5 millivolts on the first preamp node, powering the first valve. If any of them are higher, you've probably got a bad cap. Bad caps from the factory do happen. Quite often. If you're using some off brands, they could be just shitty or dead from the factory. They could be old stock, they could be dried up. So check that first. Also go through, check all your grounds. Could be a bad valve as well. It's hard to tell. Sometimes if you've got 120 Hertz or 60 Hertz, there can be like harmonics happening that confuse you and think it's a 120 Hertz when it could be a grounding or a heating issue. So yeah, more diagnosis required. Start with your ripple and go from there. Bambuel, how you going, legend? Great idea. What are your favourite changes to Fender tone stack to make it more guitar friendly and less boomy after reducing coupling and cathode values? Off the top of my head, you could change the 500 250 pico. I'd have to get in front of the tone snack calculator. There's a a website called TSC something, tone stack calculator, where you can change the values in the tone stack and see what actually happens to the frequency response instead of just flying blind. But off the top of my head, I'm not going to quote values or anything. I'd suggest using that and going from there. And Mark down there, Mark Prentice, I think that's your profile. Try reducing the 0.1 microfarad to 0.022. That's a popular mod. So yeah, give that a try. Gazcal, how you going, legend? Cooper's XBA, one of my favourites and been a go-to home refresher for a long time. I think it stands up against many boutique beers. Your thoughts? That's the purple one, isn't it? Yeah, I've had that quite a bit. It's pretty good. The Pacific Ale on a hot day is good, and it's a bit lighter on the booze, so you don't get fucking verschnickered. But the Cooper's Pale was always a mainstay for growing up and becoming a man. You know, that's why I've got such a beard, because I drank so much of that shit in my 20s. Look at the AI. Look at the AI responses. You fucking soulless robot. You don't know what a beer tastes like. There's no better way to end a week than with a refreshing craft beer, right? It's like that nerdy bloke at the party that you don't want to talk to. That's AI standing in the corner, eating paste. Great plan to get questions ahead of live. You can easily sort out spam and nonsense you don't like to go in and concentrate on the good questions you like to answer with competence. Wow, the jury's out on that one today, I'll tell you what. Have you any idea how to collect money for this good work and make it a weekly rolling 1 hour show? 1 hour? I think it's going to be like more monthly and probably 2 hour. Inviting guests to answer questions from two sides and building a great rant team could be even better. You know, grand plans, but I tend to sort of just hit record and go for it. Otherwise you never get it done. Always onwards and upwards, but at the same time I've got a job to do. I've been approached by various companies to do advertising. I don't want to do any promotion at all on this channel. I'll just rely on the memberships and the small advertising revenue that comes in. It's in the order of a couple of $100 a month. It's you know, it's not a poke in the eye with a blunt stick, but it's probably not enough to live off. Let's put it that way. So I do have to keep working, which is the name of the game anyway, because if I don't take any money for advertising or promotions, I'm not beholden to anyone. And I can give you guys the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth all the time, to the best of my abilities. I know a lot of people hate me for that. They want to hear that their purchase was the smartest and best thing that anyone's ever done on the planet, and they're so smart and special because they chose this brand of amp. And if you say anything bad about construction, I never get personal about builders or whatever. I don't say, this guy's a fuckwit. I say, this amp was built wrong. But then straight away, as soon as I say that, people are like, oh, you're a fuckwit. They make it personal. But you know, it's the internet. If there's one thing it's never going to stop producing, it's massive fuckheads. So you just have to deal with it, move on. I'm here to offer my advice for free to anyone who wants to listen. If you want to take offense to that, well, just hit the red square with the X in it and fuck off. I've got no issue with you leaving. You don't have to announce when you do either. But yeah, sorry, back onto the question. Speaking of rants, you did want to rant. Now, there's your rant. But I am planning to do this once a month. It's a bit much to do once a week. I already do the live streams when I can. So you sort of get a bit of a fly on the wall indication of what it's like to assess amps and work in an amp shop. And then this is just to consolidate all the questions that I get asked throughout the month into one little block. And it also helps me get views, because instead of personally addressing everyone's email and responding to every email and message, and it's just very time consuming, I can put them all in a block, consolidate them, compartmentalize my time, answer everything in one go, job done. If you got a question, you can wait till next month, and it just means more people watch my videos too, because they'll need the answer. Did the 100-watt boards sell quick, Brad? No, because I haven't sold them yet. Would you ever consider making a smaller head or combo if you got enough orders? Smaller head or combo? Edit smaller as in wattage. So that's a double question. The first question is about the Marshall replacement boards to suit the JCM DSL100 and TSL100 and possibly DSL50, although I want to confirm with the actual amplifier and just make sure everything works perfectly. I think there are some slight differences that aren't indicative on the schematic, so I just want to have one of them on hand to confirm everything works fine, all connectors are right. But yeah, I haven't even assembled the first production run yet. I got a minimum order of 5 boards of each just to test the final revision that's ready for production, just to be 100% sure that everything's right, and to set up the documentation so when I order the next batch I can order in a larger quantity. I can sell the bare boards and have the documentation required for people to build their own if capable. I'm not confident to sell them directly to the public because some people don't know which hole to put the food in. But the fully populated boards will be available to the general public. To start though, I might sell them to my colleagues and people I know who can basically be a beta tester for me at a discounted rate and let me know if the documentation needs any improving or if there's any issues with the boards. I've tested them, torture tested them for like a week each and they're fine, but they could find something. Maybe there could be issues with different regions or whatever, I don't know. The only way to test stuff 100% is in the field, and that's the way to do it. So once I've done that, I'll do the first production run. We're probably looking, when I say production run, the first largish batch, but we need to get some funds together for that because it's not cheap, right? Buying all these parts and paying all this money outright because I don't have credit accounts with any of these component or PCB suppliers. Everything's paid up front. And then finding the time to assemble them. I do want to try some offshore assembly services. However, that's going to have pitfalls as well and be very time consuming. So the biggest problem, and the one that gives me nightmares every night at the moment, the biggest problem is lack of time. Time is the most valuable resource. There's never enough of it, and everyone's always on your back and telling you that you're too late for everything. So I don't want to start doing these side projects when I've got jobs in the queue that I need to get out the door. As for my own amps, every time I think about making a one-off, I think about laying out a turret board and then I think, why don't I just do a circuit board? And then I think, well, let's do a batch of 5. And then I think, oh shit, I don't have time. And then it sort of stagnates. But yeah, I've got to get into that in the new year. Hi there, I had those questions about the Deluxe Reverb 68 reissue that is hissing, mother boy. Okay. And I did most mods that it turned it into a blackface and all that, but the hissing is still there. You said there is a way to fix that grounding scheme and stuff, so just as a reminder, that's my question. Thank you very much for your videos, they're amazing. I do remember you asking that. Was that on a live chat or someone else? I think that might have been on someone else's live chat. Yes, there is an issue with the grounding scheme on that model. I believe if you move the grounding for the second channel to a different node, that solves it. But I have to refresh my memory on that because I have not done it personally. I know those who have. I'll have to dig up the info from them. Maybe shoot me an email and I'll see if I can get in touch with them and see what the actual solve all issue is. I believe it's just cutting a trace, running a wire to a separate ground node. But yeah, I'd have to confirm because I haven't done it personally. Retread, how did you meet your wife and how long before you knew she was the one? Mate, I don't think anyone really knows they're the one. We're just fumbling around, falling forwards, and you find someone who laughs at your stupid jokes and off to the races. But met her at a cafe, it sounds so cheesy. Took her for a ride on the motorbike, freaked her the fuck out. She was looking for somewhere to jump off on the motorbike. We went to a pub, had lunch. She sunk about 3 vodkas to calm down a bit and she was a bit more relaxed on the ride home. And then yeah, we went to see a movie, I don't know, a while after that, and we went for dinner before the movie and missed the movie because we were too busy talking, and we realised, oh shit, it's like 9 o'clock, the movie's half over. Any plans to create some new champions? Oh, you know, if it happens, it happens. Who's the most outrageous person you've ever met? Probably, I forget his name and I shouldn't, but the drummer, was he the drummer from Rose Tattoo. I think it was Rose Tattoo. I forget his name, but he had long blonde hair. He was an older bloke. Well, yeah, of course. I was at Guitar Factory Parramatta, and I was picking up some repairs or dropping them off or something, because I used to work for the stores back then. And they let him smoke in the shop. And this was in like 2010 or something. So like, you know, no one smoking anywhere in that time, like not in bars, nothing. And he's walking around the shop with a smoke, and no one said anything because he's this rock star. But he didn't want to get his ash on anything, so he was ashing on his head, on his hair, and then walking around, oh, here you go, mate, yeah, fucking no worries. I'm like, are you ashing on your head? He's like, oh, yeah, I don't know, get it on the guitars and that. And I'm like, righto. And when he went outside and just brushed the ash off his hair, and fucking insane. But yeah, crazy dude. I don't think cigarettes were the only thing he was into. How does EMF really work? The magic. All right, let's get out of here. I've got some video editing to do. All right, champions. Well, that's me. It's about 7 p.m. I'm gonna go home and do some cooking. I love this time of year. Every time you're walking around the streets this time, you smell everyone cooking their barbecues. In winter, you smell all the roasts. In summer, you smell barbies. Oh, that tree. Big bastard. Lightning hit? Maybe. So thanks everyone for joining us. Remember, leave your comments, your questions in the comment section for this video. I'll go through them like I did for this one, pick out the best if there's heaps. If not, I'll do every one of them. And that'll be around the end of December. Might combine it with the New Year's Eve special, see what happens. See how energetic my video editing is. Help us get to the 10,000 champions. I want to do that before the end of the year. We'll have a big New Year's Eve / 10,000 subs party. So, thanks for joining us, legends. See you on the next one.